We can hear you.
You can hear me. Okay, perfect. It is our honor and our pleasure this morning to be able to sponsor Women in Business. I'm very excited to be a proud member of this organization and with the Chamber. Some of the things that we have been doing through this, as we all say, this unusual kind of time in our life, is we have continued to move forward. We actually did a little over $80 million in PPP loans this year. We're very, very focused on the small business because we have a lot of small businesses here in Williamson County. And we have kind of piggybacked on that. A lot of our business products that we have are all geared towards towards the small business client that we have. So you don't have to have extensive transactions or extensive amounts in your account and things like that. One of the things that we've also done through COVID is continued our school bank program. And normally we have had the opportunity to go into the school banks and set up accounts for children so that they can start learning what saving is. And so since we can't do that this year, we actually are having our school bank Saturday. So the children are coming into the bank here. We're just on Carruthers to the left of Dunkin' Donuts. And they've been able to come in and make their deposits and still be able to add to their account into their savings and get a prize. We're kind of doing jointly with Tiny Little Donuts and actually being able to give them individual cards when they make a deposit here as a thank you. And they usually come here on Saturdays and then they go to Tiny Little Donuts to get a good little breakfast. So it's our honor, our opportunity, anything that we can do to help small business, to help any business whatsoever, or to help you from a personal standpoint, a loan standpoint, commercial standpoint, we are more than happy to do that. So it's our honor and our pleasure to be here with you today.
Thank you, Beth. That is wonderful. Here in Williamson County, we know that the schools are the backbone, so love hearing how you're supporting them. PPP was a really big focus when first the pandemic hit here, and so thank you for everything Wilson Bank is doing. We appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. It's our pleasure. Let us know any way we can help anyone. We appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thank you. The next thing I'd like to do, Vanderbilt Health has a video they'd like to share with us. So thank you to Vanderbilt Health, Katie Peterson, for helping support and sponsor today's program. At this time, I think Griffin is going to share his screen, and we've got a quick Vanderbilt Health video for you.
Every day we go to work with a simple purpose at Vanderbilt Health: to wipe away fear, to clear minds of lingering doubt, and to care for Middle Tennessee. To help you move forward with life with the screenings, treatments, and procedures that support your health. Because we know there are far more health challenges that confront us than one virus. Staying safe is essential, so is your health. Learn more about both at vanderbilthealth.com.
Thank you again, Vanderbilt Health, for supporting today's program. And like the video says, everyone please stay well. Thank you for being flexible and joining us on this virtual platform. Next, I would like to invite Franklin City Mayor Ken Moore to unmute himself and share his video. He's going to do a brief introduction for us. If you know anything about Mayor Moore, you know that keeping our county and our city safe is very important to him, both physically and mentally. So at this time, I'd like to invite Mayor Moore to say a few words.
Well, good morning, and thanks for the opportunity to be here and talk about health in our community, which has been a focus for us, I guess, about 5 or 6 years now. And having a medical background, that's always been part of my vision for the city, that we would be a healthier community. You know, if you look at the health statistics for Tennessee, they're ugly. We're at the bottom or near the bottom. And if you look at Franklin and Williamson County, we're better than the rest of the state, but we're still not very good. So in cooperation with Franklin Tomorrow and the city, we started working on some visioning for making our community healthier. And we came up with several concepts: Get Fit Franklin, Walk More with the Mayor, and actually had some sessions where we asked the community what was important to them as far as health. And we identified 4 different areas: tobacco cessation, obesity, activity, and mental health. We were very successful in promoting all of these objectives to some degree, except for mental health. We actually received the designation from Governor Haslam as a pilot healthier community, and subsequently were named one of the initial 9 healthier communities in the state of Tennessee. Carrying that forward, I mentioned that mental health was a challenge. We have a higher teen suicide rate than most communities in the state. Chief Faulkner and I both share concerns as far as suicide and mental health of our citizens. Many of the calls that our police answer are related to mental health crises. And sadly, many of those people go 1 of 2 places. They go to the emergency room, stay 2 to 3 days, or they go to jail, and they go in the back of a police car. A little over a year and a half ago, I'm guessing, I appointed a blue ribbon panel to review mental health and discuss what we could do as a community. It's a very large subject. We narrowed it down to making sure that our citizens had access to the best resources. And so we created a website that lists the best resources. We also cooperated with Franklin Tomorrow to create or to get a grant to do QPR training: question, persuade, refer. And we believe that since everybody knows CPR, there's no reason that they should not know QPR: question, persuade, and refer. So our goal is to train as many people and as many groups as possible in Franklin on QPR training. We plan on training trainers, so we have ready access, and we've already started that process, even though it's not going as fast as we'd like. Thirdly, we identified the need for a facility or an intake facility where people that are in mental health crises could be taken and get into a continuum of care. That's more of a long-term goal. Currently, we're working with a number of people that know how to get the word out on social media as far as trying to raise awareness of the mental health issues and particularly suicide in our community. So this is a very challenging time that we're in, and we're seeing an increase in mental health issues and domestic violence in our community and suicide. And so I think this opportunity to hear Amy today, who I'm a huge fan of hers, to talk to us about how to relieve some of that stress that we're experiencing in the workplace. So thanks for the opportunity to talk about that, and love for you to go to the website, Find Hope Franklin.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mayor Moore. We really appreciate all you're doing to help keep our community safe, and absolutely love that you have a goal of making QPR just as common as CPR. So thank you again for all you do. At this time, I would like to invite Paige Thompson to unmute her microphone, introduce herself. She is our Women in Business Chair this year. And then Paige, feel free to introduce our speaker today.
Great. Thanks so much, Abby. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, perfect. We are so glad to be able to have Amy speak with us, Amy Alexander with the Refuge. It's such a very timely topic for all that is going on right now in and around our world. So Amy, with that, I'm going to let you take it from here.
Great. Well, thank you so much to Women in women in business, the chamber, and then also to Mayor Moore, who I am also a huge fan of. I think he exemplifies so many characteristics of remarkable leadership and is just a fun and joyful person with great intentions and really important focus areas. So thank you for introducing me. I am Amy Alexander, co-founder and executive director of the Refuge Center for Counseling. Hopefully many of you are familiar with the Refuge Center, but if you're not, we are in our 15th year of serving this community. We do have about 60% of our clients that come from Williamson County. The other 40% come from 17 other counties around Tennessee. We have been providing services on a sliding fee scale for all 15 of those years to make our services accessible and affordable for everyone. We believe that every single citizen deserves access to quality mental health care. And so our sliding fee scale, it ranges actually from $25 a session up to $120. On average, our clients pay about $40 per session, which makes it very accessible. The cost for us, though, runs into the 80s per session. So that $40 gap is what we have to fundraise for every session that we provide. And we've got a very generous community that comes behind our organization in that. We are busy. We anticipate providing about 36,000 counseling sessions this year alone for nearly 4,000 people from our community. And so we are honored to walk with people. You see the sign behind me, it says, "You don't have to walk this road alone." And we're honored to walk with people in the tough challenges, the storms that life brings us. We know that no matter who you are, how much money you make, what your title is at work, what fancy colleges the kids may be at, none of those things make you exempt from pain or suffering. Unfortunately, every single one of us will at some point lose someone we care about, perhaps be in conflict with someone we love. We may have a child that's struggling. And there are just these things that sometimes are really outside of our control, but it creates, the Refuge Center creates a place for brokenhearted people to come and to feel seen, safe, soothed, and secure in their suffering, so that their stories transform from being ones of pain to stories of rising and resiliency, which is a beautiful thing to witness. We get to do sacred work at Refuge. So I was asked to give this presentation back in March, and of course, our whole world changed at that time. And so we've delayed it 6-7 months here. And I feel, well, I'm someone who trusts the timing of things. I believe that things happen when they're supposed to. And so I believe that the content I have today was meant to be delivered to you in October. I really do trust that. So the topic that I was given was, I'm gonna just kind of read that for you. It was workplace wellness. Stress less, how to combat stress and prevent burnout so you and your employees can develop the culture you've always wanted. And I really believe that this group is a sophisticated group of women. I know that many people in this group are committed to continuing education and ongoing learning and developing strong workplace cultures. So I wanted to take us beyond the basics today. I wanted to talk about 4 areas where we can do better in this. And I want to share with you that I think that big picture, this is really about, it's about your leadership, especially in a time of crisis. It's about the systemic impacts of your leadership. It's about your culture. It's about the pace, and it's about the values that you're delivering in your workplace. So we're gonna dive pretty deep today. I do not have a PowerPoint. That's intentional. I like to use PowerPoints when I'm speaking in person. Online, I think they can be a distraction. And I'm going to give you a lot of content today. We're probably going to move a little faster than what I could click through in a PowerPoint. And so here's my suggestion: is have a pen and paper, or have maybe some notes that you can take on your laptop or on your phone, and be listening in a mindful way for phrases, ideas, and examples of things that you want to translate in your own workplace. And many of you are leaders and business owners, and you have the power to affect those changes. For those of you who maybe aren't in that position, I would encourage you to be listening today to things you could take back to your leader to say, hey, could we explore implementing a change or two? But listen with a thoughtful approach and catch the things that are especially meaningful for you in your space. So like I said, I'm going to give us a lot of content today. I'm hoping to make this a really meaningful hour for all of you, and I'm looking forward to it. So the 4 focus areas for today, this one wasn't going to be back in March, but I've added a first section here called Leading in a Crisis. Leading in a crisis. The second section is about your culture. The third section is about PACE, P-A-C-E, PACE. And the fourth one is titled Do Your Own Work. All right, so jumping into leading in a crisis. In March 2020, so just a few months ago, the American Psychiatric Association surveyed a large group of Americans, and 36% of them, 36% of Americans said that COVID was having a serious impact on their mental health. Even before COVID-19, 1 in 5 employees fit the criteria for a diagnosable mental health challenge at any given time. So there's no doubt that our team members need our support. But unfortunately, there is not a playbook for leading through something like COVID. There's no manual for any of us. And simultaneously, leaders will be remembered for how they respond during this time. So that's a lot to carry on our shoulders. And we may be struggling with how to respond to the unprecedented challenges of the pandemic, but there are some very concrete crisis response skills that can be cultivated. The good news that I have for you on this piece today is that none of these require that you be superhuman. Regular, fallible humanity is welcomed and embraced. So I'm going to give you 5 tips for this first section called Leading in a Crisis. All right. So the first one, and you know, I might contend that this is potentially even the most important, but the first one is practice compassionate leadership. Practice compassionate leadership. So over and over again, we've heard this phrase, we're all in this together. And that's true. But the truth is that every person has unique life circumstances with this pandemic that cause it to be more or less of an acute concern. So we may not know in our workplace who has a vulnerable family member that's at risk. We don't know if someone's already suffering from acute anxiety and it makes these fears and uncertainties more intense. We don't ever know quite what someone's dealing with behind closed doors. And so leading with compassion and empathy at a time like this is more critical than ever. So some specific ways to practice compassionate leadership. First of all, be curious. Times like these call for increased empathy, so it's important to assume positive intent. It's important to assume positive intent and listen with an open mind and put yourself in someone else's shoes. So we can be experts in our fields, most of us are, but individuals are experts in themselves. The employee sitting across the table from you is the only expert in themselves. So you can ask some simple questions. How are you? What do you need? And how can I best support you in this season? How are you? What do you need? And how can I best support you in this season? You could also consider starting a team meeting with a check-in where every person gets to select one word to describe their feelings at that moment. But being curious shows that you care. The second way to practice compassionate leadership is listening, mindful listening. And by that, I mean listening without the need to fix, analyze, or correct. Just give your team the space to be open and honest about how they feel mentally and physically. One more part here to compassionate leadership, and it's being vulnerable. Great leaders don't need to know exactly what to do in uncertain times. The Harvard Business Review recently came out with an article called "Today's Leaders Need Vulnerability, Not Bravado." So if you're looking to help a situation, communicate that you want input from your team, that you don't have all the answers. And as leaders, we don't have to solve the problems of all of our people. We do need to listen and support them. And as we do that, we become stronger together. The second tip for leading through a crisis is providing resources. And this is really important. In and following the kind of pandemic that we are living through, there can be a secondary pandemic of traumatic stress and mental health challenges. The secondary pandemic. So I'm going to say something kind of bold here, but the statement I'm going to make is investing in support services cannot be optional. I would ask that you and your boards and investors consider a short-term or long-term budget item to invest in every employee's mental health. So you might consider a perks program. This is something we have at the Refuge Center, and it's discretionary funding. So for example, and it's not a lot of money, but for example, at Refuge, for a full-time salaried employee, we would give around $1,500 a year in perks funds. And those things can be allocated towards counseling, spiritual direction, life coaching, financial planning, meal preparation, house cleaning. It's anything that allows that employee to have more margin for connecting with themselves, others, and God. So, and a little bit goes a long way. So even a minor line item can make a big difference. Encourage sharing mental health resources. You may create a specific channel in Slack or a specific message board where your employees can talk about meditations that are working for them, breathing exercises, apps like Calm and Headspace, or thought leadership content on how to deal with negative thoughts and be more empathetic. They might also just want to share positive quotes they've read or words of encouragement with one another. So promote that, create a space for that to happen. And finally, under providing resources, some of you who've heard me talk before throughout the last 6 months have heard me use a term called the window of tolerance, okay? So the window of tolerance is this zone where we function most effectively. If we get above that zone, that's called hyperarousal, we are irritable, uncomfortable, panicked, angry. We feel like we're out of control even of our own bodies. We kick into fight, flight, freeze in the above zone. When we get below the zone of the window of tolerance, this is hypoarousal, we get lethargic, depressed, we feel spacey, like we're losing track of time. Here's the thing, stress and trauma shrink the window. So maybe before you had an employee who could handle a pretty hefty workload and they would manage it fine. Well, in a pandemic, all of our windows have shrunk. So one of the things you can do is help your team members know what each of their own strategies are going to be when they need to recalibrate. You know, and sometimes it's enough just to say, hey, I'm outside my window a little bit right now. I'm going to need a minute. And someone can just name that. But giving your team members permission to recalibrate at work, okay? So step aside, take 10 deep breaths, bring your tennies and go on a brisk walk, okay? Do a 1-minute pause. There's a new app called 1 Minute Pause by John Eldredge. But let your team members know, especially during this season, you have the freedom to recalibrate even during the workday as needed. Okay, number 3, under leading in a crisis is being flexible. Whenever possible, give your teams the flexibility to adapt their current reality. Some of your team members are working from home. They've got kids that are doing online school. They've got partners who are also working from home. So you want to set clear expectations about project due dates, but give your team members the freedom to complete those tasks during a time frame that balances their other commitments. I mean, put yourself in their shoes, right? Like, what would you want if you were the employee? Well, I'm sure flexibility is something we all need. And here's the reality: the stress of COVID-19, it impacts our sleep, our focus, and our productivity. Your team is probably not operating at 100% every day. So let's accept the reality of where we're really at, and it will help us make better decisions. Continuing to overwork your team when their reserves are low just pushes them into burnout faster. So let's name where we really are. Let's be truthful that our tanks are a little lower than normal. And then let's adjust the goals to meet the needs of the season. Offering flexibility wherever possible promotes sustainable success. I love this idea that even the most ambitious farmers let fields lie fallow for a season to promote long-term productivity. Farmers know this. This might be the season for you to reassess the intensity of the goals and the culture. And the fourth and final tip in this section under leading in a crisis is clarity. Be clear. The amount of information that we're taking in right now, there's a global crisis, a pandemic, a recession, we've got wildfires, we've got tornadoes, it's an election season. We are taking in so much information, and the more clear and decisive you can be, the easier it's going to be on your team. Clarity and consistency is critical. When a system is in overdrive, it's very hard to process nuance and complexity. So be crystal clear about what choices your team has and how you're going to support them. Your goal is going to be to give frequent, clear, and reliable information, because if we don't, we leave room for stories to emerge, the stories we tell ourselves, which can be contradictory and unsettling to your intentions. There's a beautiful quote by Louisa Cartwright Tucker. She's the Vice President of Operations at Headspace, which is a mindfulness company. They have a great app. But she talks about psychological safety in the workplace. And she says, it's important that as leaders, we do all we can to create the conditions for our employees to feel supported. Psychological safety should be a top priority. How might we empower our employee communities with regular, consistent, and trusted information allows them to make the right decisions specific to their personal needs as well as team members. So clarity is one way that we promote safety. All right, so those are those pieces right there for you under leading in a crisis. It is practice compassionate leadership, provide resources, be flexible, and be clear. So there may be some takeaways for you in that section. Again, I want to think systemically in this conversation. So I'm going to transition now to the next piece, which is around your workplace culture. I give trainings on workplace culture a lot, and I normally need at least 90 minutes to do that. I'm going to give you 10. We'll see what we can get through in 10. Henry Cloud, who is a leadership expert, and he wrote the book Integrity, he co-wrote the book Boundaries. He says that when you've got a speedboat out on the water and it's headed right towards where it's going, that in the water, it leaves behind it a balanced wake, okay? So in an organization, when you have a place that's right on mission, headed right where it needs to be, the wake it leaves behind it is a balance of outcomes and relationships. All right, so we've all been perhaps in workplaces where it was all about the outcomes. What have you done for me lately? Show me the numbers. I don't know your story. I don't care. Just get it done. Some of us are in places where it's a lot about the relationships, you know, and it's a family environment, and we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, and we don't terminate anybody because we don't want to step on toes. We need a balance of both of those things. We need outcomes and relationships to have an equal emphasis. People feel motivated and energized by goals and expectations, but really for the long term only when they feel seen and cared for. So my intention with providing you tips on strengthening your workplace culture is that if you do that, it inevitably reduces stress and increases resilience to it. in my opinion, this is the really fun part. If our only goal for success is the bottom line or achievements or awards, we're missing something, and that is connection. When we really connect with people, when we know we're not alone, when we know we can do hard things together, honestly, that is when the workplace becomes the most creative and invigorative that it can be. So Daniel Siegel is this brilliant neuroscientist, and he says that a healthy bond between two people, even coworkers, includes 4 key things. Okay, it's when people feel seen, safe, soothed, and secure. Seen, safe, soothed, and secure. And he says from that, we then relate from a place of kindness and empathy, which I think we all want and we all need. So in this section, I'm gonna get really practical. I'm gonna share some things that we do here, and some of these may work for you. Write them down, translate them as you see fit. So this first one, okay, feeling seen. Well, that's not just seeing someone with the eyes, that's perceiving them deeply and empathetically. One of the ways that people feel seen is when they're known. When they're known. So early on, we want to get to know someone's story. At the very beginning, in hiring, in onboarding, we're asking purposeful questions like, hey, tell me about any event in your life that has been so positive or so negative that it permanently affected your outlook on life. That's a fascinating question to ask someone. We ask them, what experiences or values guide you? And there's no right or wrong answer there. We're just looking to really know the core of someone. When we bring them on board, of course, there's a lot of paperwork that needs to be done and logistics, but we ask their staff member, their team leader, to take them to lunch or to coffee. And we have them bring 3 to 5 items of significance that tell their story at this coffee. So this is not a functional meeting. This is a relational meeting. So they may show up with a little brown paper bag, and in there they've got a wooden cross their grandfather carved for them, and a book they read as a child, and a locket from their spouse. And it's just a storytelling time. Tell me some things so I can really know you better. We love personality inventories. So the Enneagram, the DISC, Strength Finders, Values in Action. Those are all things that help us know someone so we understand them in context. And then finally, initiate a questionnaire early on when you bring people in. Ask them about their strengths, their passions, and how they like to be recognized. If you're recognizing someone in a way that's meaningful to them, it helps them feel seen. It's hard to feel seen when you're not ever together. We know this maybe more than we ever have before, but once it's safe to do so again, help people feel seen with time together. So maybe a quarterly potluck that each senior staff hosts in their home. And let your team members bring their kids and their spouses when appropriate, so you can get to know their whole family. You might consider what we would call an experiential retreat, where you leave the site and go do something really fun or interesting together. You're going to see a whole different side of the personality of your team members. Here at Refuge, we theme every year. So it might be the year of courage, creativity, compassion, generosity, gratitude. And every month we do an activity together around that theme. And we've done soulful collages, artful cooking, dance, yoga, stained glass, mandalas, gardening, pottery, hikes, gratitude jars. Just the sky's the limit. And you may be sitting here going, what in the world does this have to do with stress? Well, let me just remind you that the more someone feels cared for, the more you really know them. When we hit a tough spot as a company or in our personal, professional dynamic, we're going to be more resilient to it. So I'm telling you, these things matter a lot. Another way to help people feel seen is the way you honor and celebrate them. So put a line item in your budget for staff appreciation, gift cards, lunches, gift baskets. Be sure that wherever you can, you're honoring birthdays, baby showers, and wedding showers. If you see someone has a real niche for something and you want to help them grow in that area, put some money behind that. See them in saying, I'm going to send you to this training. I think you've got some real potential in an area and I want to help you grow in that way. At Refuge, we've got a director of compassionate care, and she has a nurture team, and her whole job is to bless the people that work here, because we're taking care of clients. So if we're full, we can do a better job of caring for our clients. And so they are constantly planning fun things, silly things, meaningful things. One of the things I would also say about feeling seen is to honor exits and entries. Okay, when people are joining your team, make a big deal of that. Have a party, donuts in the break room because 3 new people have just joined our team. Here's their photos. Be sure you go by and greet them today. Same thing when someone's leaving. You know, there is a quote that says, no one will remember how you started, but everyone will remember how you finished. And we talk a lot at Refuge about finishing well. And part of finishing well, we give someone a book called A Time for Leaving, and it's about a tree that loses its leaves. It's this beautiful metaphor book. Some of you are familiar with the giving key. We also give people a giving key, and it's got a word that we inscribed on there in terms of what we've seen in them over their time at Refuge. So honor the exits too. I talked with someone the other day who it was her last day at her job, and she said, I walked out of the building and no one said a word. No one said goodbye. No one said best of luck. And I just wondered if my time there mattered at all. And so don't let that be true of your company. Okay, right. So Daniel Siegel says, seen, safe, secure, and soothe. Let's talk about safe and secure. Safe and secure. One of the ways people feel safe and secure is by being in a place where there's a constant feedback loop. I know that sounds contradictory. We tend to think of feedback as scary, but when someone knows where they stand, it gives them a sense of assurance. So I want to tell you today, there's 3 types of feedback, okay? Appreciation, coaching, and evaluation. Appreciation is when you say, I see you and you matter. Coaching are the things that I'm going to tell you to help you be better, to grow. And evaluation is where do you stand and what can you expect? So on our annual performance reviews, where we not only rate performance, we rate posture, because someone can do a really great job and have a terrible attitude. So we want to evaluate both. But we have 3 sections. We have appreciation, coaching, and evaluation. Another way for people to feel safe and secure with you and to decrease their stress is timely, thoughtful, non-automatic responses. I bet we can all think back over our work history and think about a time when we had a boss who we would send an important question to, something we'd given a lot of thought to, and what we got back was a 1-word answer, or we never got a response back, or the response we got was misspelled and didn't even make sense, and we can tell they didn't read it in the first place. And that feels a certain way to us. You know, it's like, man, did the effort I put into this really matter? So thoughtful, timely, non-automatic responses help people feel heard and valued. And feeling safe and secure has to do with confidentiality. So make sure you're providing corrective action in respectful, safe, and supportive environments. Another way people feel safe and secure is with clarity. That goes back to what I talked about in leading in a crisis. But make sure someone's roles and job descriptions are clearly defined. What am I here to do? How am I going to make a difference? Make sure you have a defined conflict resolution process. Here we have a policy called Go Direct. And that's just if you have a question or concern, go directly to the person you have the question or concern about. If you cannot do that, if for some reason it doesn't feel safe or practical, then you go to your supervisor, but nobody else. You know, don't go to the person in the office next to you because frankly, they can't create movement around this issue for you and it's just not productive. If you're looking for a guidebook for a conflict resolution process, I would highly recommend The Anatomy of Peace by the Arbinger Institute, the Anatomy of Peace. And finally, under safe and secure, keep your door open as much as you can. We have a policy here at Refuge that says if you're not in supervision or session, your door should be open. And the reason for that is you can walk the halls of our soon to be, at this space, 30 offices and find lots of open doors. And you can say, hey, I just had a really tough case. Can I staff a couple of directions with this? I need some resources. Or you might go, my grandmother was hospitalized over the weekend and I'm just looking for somebody who can pray with me right now. I'm really struggling. But keep your door open so people can use each other for resources and emotional support. Okay, and the final S here is soothed. Soothed. Misunderstanding, misinterpretation, and mistakes are inevitable no matter how strong your family or your work culture is. In therapy, we call these ruptures, okay? And a rupture is inevitable. It's gonna happen because we're human. What matters not is, are there ruptures occurring? What matters is, are they being repaired? So I'm going to challenge you that as leaders in your organization, you need to demonstrate courage and humility to repair hurt and provide comfort. This is what Brene Brown would call brave apologies. If you saw a funny look on somebody's face yesterday as a meeting was ending and you're not sure if they really interpreted something you said the way you meant it, go to them. Go to them and just check on that. You might also, in soothing your employees, look for meaningful ways to help people who are hurting. In an organization for us with 70 people, everybody's going through something, you know, and we've had some real losses. We had an employee recently very unexpectedly lose a parent. And at Refuge, we want to do things that are symbolically meaningful. So we've started purchasing wind chimes when someone has a loss, and using that as a gift for them because they can hang it out in their yard or on their front porch. And every time that wind chimes, it helps them remember and honor the person that they've loved and lost and remember the love that Refuge has for them. So again, think of meaningful ways to soothe people who are hurting. Finally, on this section, don't forget about the basics. So you guys probably from a college psychology class remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay, it's this triangle. And at the very bottom are the basic needs: food, water, warmth, and rest. I want to tell you that you can make a big difference by thinking about those things for your employees. So I remember sending out a survey once and saying, what are the things we could offer here at Refuge that would help you feel more comfortable on a hard day, a cloudy day? Okay, I got emails galore. I said it would be, our team member said it would be awesome to just have free snacks available: granola bars and Kind bars and cheese sticks and apples, healthy drinks. Some of them said, well, we'd love to have essential oils out where we could diffuse them in our offices or put them on our temples when we've got a headache. I'd love to have a leave or heating pads, or my office needs a fan or a heater, exercise machines on site. I mean, people had great ideas about ways that Refuge could offer soothing elements. So don't forget about the basics. All right. So that was the section on culture. There's so much more that could be said there. And I really would love to come and talk individually with any of you that want to explore that further. For just a second here, and these last two sections are shorter, but I want to talk about your pace. And boy, there's a lot to say. We are a high achieving community, Williamson County. You guys are a part of that, and it is to be commended. Our county values progress, accomplishment, and excellence. And you know what? We get results too. Our companies are profitable. Our school test scores are strong. We attract company headquarters, and we enjoy wealth and success. But what we see here at Refuge is maybe the underbelly of that a little bit. We're finding people noticing that they're tired and anxious and overwhelmed and overstimulated. And sometimes it's not that we're doing any of the wrong things, but the stress is related to our pace. There's a Chinese pictograph that's it's two images linked together. The two images, one is heart and one is killing. And the word that the Chinese come up with from this pictograph is busy. So to describe the word busy, they use the symbols heart and killing. Harvard Business Review conducted a study on the change in social status in America. So it used to be that like leisure was a sign of wealth. People with more money spent more time playing tennis or sailing, sipping white wine during lunch at the golf club. But really all of that has changed. It's now become that busyness is a sign of wealth. If you look at commercials and magazines for luxury items, they used to show the rich sitting by the south of pool in France, by the pool in the south of France. Now they show the wealthy in New York or downtown LA leading meetings in high-rise offices. So our picture of what it means to be successful is shifting. One person said, we've developed hurry sickness. Hurry sickness is characterized by constant rushing and anxiousness. We feel chronically short of time, so we do every task faster and faster and get more flustered when we encounter any delay. We are a frazzled digital generation. Wayne Mueller, who wrote the book Sabbath, which I'd recommend for everyone, Wayne says that we've lost the rhythm between work and rest. We think that action and accomplishment are better than rest, that doing something and anything is better than nothing. And because of our desire to succeed and meet the ever-growing expectations, we don't rest. And when we don't rest, we lose our way. We miss the quiet that gives us wisdom. And all of you, isn't that what you really want? You know, as business leaders, don't you want the wisdom and discernment to take the next right steps with your businesses? But being perpetually in motion disconnects us from the places in ourselves where we can find the most hope, the most compassion, and the most grace. I heard it said once that you can't live a hurried life and a compassionate one at the same time. So we've got to find a more thoughtful, deliberate, intentional pace with more margin and white spaces. Margin is the space between our load and our limits. So let me just ask you in terms of the stress in your workplace, what's your pace imply for your employees and your team members? What are you modeling for them? Is everything urgent? Do you walk into the office and the energy is like a frenzy and it's pressure filled and it's intense? Or are you the kind of leader that models rest, balance, and appropriate differentiation from your title? I'm telling you, there's some people who are working really hard because their title is all they have. It's all they know that they are. And sometimes that's unconscious. But what do you want people to say about you as a leader? What do you want your legacy to be? When I wrote this, I kind of laughed because I was kind of joking, but really, do you want people to say that you were the busiest, most productive, strategic person they ever met? Or do you want them to say that you were one of the kindest, most present, generous, and thoughtful people they ever met? What do you want on your professional tombstone, guys? We can start the shift in simple ways. Just walk a little slower into the office today. Talk a little slower in your meetings. Put boundaries around your emails. Schedule breaks, use your PTO, create sabbaticals into your company policy. When we are moving at the pace of what is real, values-driven, reasonable, and sustainable, we become a fountain, not a drain. Okay, and last but not least, do your own work. Do your own work. This is about you being the healthiest emotionally, spiritually, and physically that you can be. There's a great website called circleofsecurity.org. It's a research institute out of Washington State. And when they developed this material, it was about the parent-child dynamic, but they used to have this video called Shark Music. And when you watch this video, it was this pair of bare feet walking down a sandy path. And on either side were beautiful palm trees swaying in the wind and this sparkling ocean ahead. And at first there's classical music playing. And boy, it's soothing. Your heart rate slows down. You're thinking, I would love to be there. Gosh, what a place of rest and retreat. The scene pauses and it starts again. And this time it's all the same visuals. Palm trees, sparkling water, sand, bare feet. But now the music to Jaws starts playing. Da-na, na-na, na-na. and you're going, oh no, whoa, hold on, this is about to get bloody. Your heart rate goes up, you're breathing, you're thinking, I don't want to see this. Here's the message for you. We all have our own shark music. Every single one of us, the experiences that we've been through, our trauma history, our story, it creates our shark music. And whatever music is playing colors everything else. It shades everything else. So if you haven't done your own work, you're bringing your shark music to the workplace and it's stressing out your employees. It really is. So do your own work is not about a laundry list. It's not about more things you need to do. It's about living a life of freedom and spaciousness so you can offer love and care and fullness. So to close, I'm just going to give you a few things like, what is she talking about? Do your own work. Well, who are the people in your life that give you feedback about your blind spots? Who are the people that challenge and encourage you? There's some research that says you need 4 to 7 iron sharpens iron people in your life. Who are your 4 to 7? I'm telling you, I meet with people every day who can't name one. Whether you meet with this person once a quarter, once a week, who are your 4 to 7? And they're going to tell you hard things. They're going to ask you hard questions. So it might be a counselor, a spiritual director, a pastor, your small group leader, a life coach, Enneagram teacher. It might be your Celebrate Recovery group, AA. The list goes on. But who are the people telling you the hard stuff? Be a learner. You know, what podcasts are you listening to? What are you reading? There's so many great things that can help us be learning about ourselves. I mentioned the word sabbaticals earlier. We have a sabbatical policy here. I know that is a little bit more common, like in university settings and sometimes ministry settings. Even in those settings, sometimes you're expected to go on sabbatical and produce something like research or write a book. Here, every 5 years you're on staff, you take a month off and you're signed out of your computer, your password is changed. We have a vacation optimizer that we use, and we want you to sign off and just totally recalibrate. There's some wonderful daily practices I'd love to introduce you to, and if you're doing your own work, okay, the Examine is a beautiful practice. Daniel Siegel's got one called SIFT, S-I-F-T, and then things like Headspace and the 1-minute pause I mentioned earlier. And finally, just mindfulness practices and self-care. So self-care is simply putting back in as much as has left. And on any given week, what you're going to need to pour into yourself, that amount's going to change. The intensity is going to change. If you've had a lot of hard meetings, what you need to do for yourself this weekend is going to look different than last weekend. But think of yourself as a tank. And if you're running on fumes, you're not leading well and you're creating stress in your organization. So fundamentally, you've got to be a safe and secure person for yourself before you can give that to others. All right, so that concludes leading in a crisis culture, pace, and do your own work. I know I've run through that at a pretty good clip. I wanted to give you all that material, and hopefully there's some good takeaways there.
Amy, that was absolutely amazing. I took so many notes. So thank you so much. Just a really timely, great wealth of information. I'd like to open it up to a few questions. If anybody has any questions, if you could please use the chat box and she will answer some questions for us. But that was excellent. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
So it looks like we have a question. Any other recommended reading or podcasts that you would recommend?
Sure. Well, I mean, I guess it depends on what emphasis or focus area, but broadly, I think Brene Brown's podcast that she has out right now is phenomenal, and the material is very translatable. Another one that I'd recommend is Emily P. Freeman, and hers is called The Next Right Step. And she's got these like 9 to 23-minute podcasts about the very next right thing to do. And that one's really palatable.
Does anybody else have any questions they'd like to put in the chat box?
I guess while you guys are thinking about other questions in terms of readings, so John Eldredge has a brand new book that just came out called Get Your Life Back. It is faith oriented, but it's a wonderful book. I mentioned Sabbath by Wayne Mueller. I mentioned Henry Cloud earlier with Boundaries and Integrity. So just a handful of really good reads.
Well, I don't think we have any other questions. Oh, we do. Can you explain the window of tolerance one more time?
Yeah. Hi, Scott. Sure. So the window of tolerance is where our brain is functioning optimally. It's the amount of stress. So stress can be good. It prompts us to get up and get going and get excited about our day. A little bit of stress is good, too much stress is bad. The window of tolerance is when we have the optimal amount of stress in our lives. When we fall below the window of tolerance, that's when we are so overwhelmed and anxious that we freeze. So we get lethargic, we don't want to get out of bed, we're depressed, and there's just no motivation or energy. When we get above our window of tolerance, that is when we are anxious, frantic, panicked, everything's in fast speed. So we want to try to keep in our window of tolerance. And when we're flipping out on either side, that's when we go, wait a minute, I'm falling outside my window. I need to recalibrate. And here's the 5 things I know that I can do to recalibrate. I love baking. I go get the Southern Living magazine every month and I try to figure out all the things I can cook on the weekends. And so I know that I'm going to need to bake when I'm falling outside my window of tolerance. So it doesn't have to be anything huge, but helping yourself know what that is and your team know what that is big.
Any more questions from anyone? Okay. Thank you again so much. This was so great. I really appreciate your time and all the information you shared with us. And we're so blessed to have the Refuge Center in our community and all that you all do. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I would also like to thank Beth Pollock with Wilson Bank and Kate Peterson with Vanderbilt Health. They were the sponsors of our meeting today, so none of this would have been possible without them. So thank you both so very, very much. And stay tuned for our end of the year Women in Business end of the year event. We'll have more information coming out about that. So and thank you so much to Abby and Griffin at the Chamber for all that you do to help put all this together in these very interesting times that we're living in. So thank you again, Amy, so much, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their week. Thank you all.
Thanks for having me.